When the world's attention is focused on the two great powers, China and the United States, there is another country quietly entering its own golden age: India. In the past 3 years, India has continued to feature prominently in global news. By the second quarter of 2023, India's economy solidified its position as the world's fourth largest economy, surpassing Germany. How ironic, considering that India was once a British colony. In just 30 years, the roles have reversed, and now even the British Prime Minister is of Indian descent. By 2022, as a neutral party in the Russia-Ukraine war, India maneuvered between the US and Russia, reaping significant benefits by reselling low-cost Russian oil. It was a win-win situation. Consequently, more and more Western countries started praising India in the media, explicitly favoring its economic prospects. They even predicted that in a few years, India would upend everyone's understanding. How has India developed over the past 2 years? Why is the West unanimously optimistic about India? What makes India strong? Listen to my analysis today, and you'll understand. When talking about India, what is your first impression? Some say it's the singing and dancing in Indian movies. Others mention the pervasive smell of curry on its streets, or the crowded Indian trains with people even sitting on top. These impressions are not wrong, but they might not represent today's India anymore. In other words, our perceptions of India need updating. While the world focuses on the US, Russia, and China, India is quietly entering its own golden age. If you don't believe it, let me give you some statistics. According to the latest United Nations World Population Prospects report published in April 2024, India has become the world's most populous country, surpassing China in early 2023. For over 30 years, India has maintained a high population growth rate, with a significant increase in births and a decline in newborn mortality rates. In addition to population growth, India's population is also very young. You might not believe it, but the median age of Indians is under 30, with more than 2/3 of the population under 35. In contrast, look at the birth rates and aging issues in countries like China, Japan, and South Korea. Undoubtedly, India is poised to enter an era of demographic dividend. Recent statistics from the International Monetary Fund highlight India's impressive economic trajectory. After surpassing the UK in 2022, India's economy is now 15% larger than the UK's and is making a strong bid for the title of the world's third largest economy. According to the latest report by the State Bank of India, India's economy is expected to surpass Germany's by 2025 and Japan's by 2027, solidifying its position as the world's third largest economy, second only to the US and China. Whether you believe it or not, most major global institutions predict that India will become a powerful economic force within the next decade. Some even foresee India's economic power surpassing that of the United States in a few years. In Western societies, including the mainstream US, India's economic potential is highly regarded. So why is India succeeding? The reasons mainly boil down to the following 4 points, especially the last one, which many people might not expect. First, a large young population provides a continuous momentum for India's economic growth. In the late 90s, which countries or regions had the most developed economies in Asia? Everyone knows the famous Asian four little dragons. Take South Korea, for example. Its economic development was essentially driven by exports, with companies like Hyundai and Samsung doing business worldwide and earning substantial international capital during the post-World War II's peace period. The Asian four little dragons generally followed this export-driven model of economic growth driven by external demand, with customers mainly in Europe and the US. In contrast, think about South Korea or Singapore. The land area of Singapore is just a tiny fraction. There is not a large domestic market. But India is different. Over the past few years, India has seen rapid economic development, primarily driven by a significant increase in domestic demand rather than overseas demand. According to the latest data from the United Nations, as of April this year, India has become the most populous country in the world. More people means higher consumption, a positive for economic growth. More importantly, India's population structure is very young. By the end of 2023, the average age in India was only 28, with over 60% of the population between the ages of 15 and 64. More young people mean more demand for consumption, entertainment, socializing, housing, and family life. Even if a country has a large population, if everyone saves instead of spending, it won't create strong domestic demand. Media data shows that while Indians might not be the wealthiest internationally, their consumption habits are quite advanced. In 2023, the U.S. residents' consumption rate is approximately 72%, and India's rate is 68%. Just watch Indian movies. They break into song and dance as if for no reason. This entertainment-first, happy-go-lucky spirit fosters a mainstream value system where young people prioritize consumption. Friends with an economics background know that three main drivers pull a country's economic development: investment, export, and consumption. India, harnessing its large young population, is driving economic growth through strong domestic demand and consumption. The second reason is that by generating revenue through domestic demand, India has invested heavily in domestic infrastructure, laying the foundation for further foreign investment. Friends living in cities, do you ever feel that the rapid development of urban infrastructure? This concentration of growth is due to the government's accumulation of significant fiscal funds through economic development, which it then invested in infrastructure, creating another wave of economic growth. This pattern is a common occurrence in the history of national development. When we think of India, the first impression might be of disorder and poor hygiene, with streets littered with garbage and various objects floating in the Ganges. Even its capital, New Delhi, might appear worse than third- or fourth-tier cities in developed countries. Many netizens joke that the city's construction does not meet the standards of a civilized city. Frankly, this is indeed a part of India's past, but it describes the India of a few years ago. Today's India is much like mainland China in 2010, with the government spending heavily on infrastructure to change global perceptions and attract foreign investment. In 2021, India launched an ambitious infrastructure plan, allocating 10 billion Indian rupees to invest in domestic aviation, railways, and roads. To put it in perspective, this amount is roughly 134 million USD. Indians are serious about improving their infrastructure, spending nearly 10 billion USD and purchasing hundreds of airplanes. Although their industrial base isn't as strong as developed countries, their commitment is evident, and significant investments in infrastructure are bound to show results. So don't keep your perception of India in the past. In 5 to 8 years, India could indeed become clean and well-developed, similar to the major cities of developed countries today. India's focus on infrastructure is to attract foreign investment. Geographically, India connects Asia to Europe. Chinese travelers flying to Europe often transit through Dubai, benefiting from Dubai's excellent infrastructure. India is envious and believes its geographical advantages are on par with Dubai's. The significant difference between Indian and Dubai cities lies in infrastructure. Bridging this gap could attract more overseas flights and foreign investment. Since 2015, India has demonstrated its ability to attract foreign investment. In a single year, India received over $50 billion in foreign investment, an annual increase of over 50%. In subsequent years, the scale of foreign investment in India has grown. In 2022, India attracted significant foreign investment. The total foreign direct investment, FDI, inflows into India stood at around USD 84.83 billion, which was a testament to India's growing appeal as a viable destination for global investors. Never underestimate the capacity to attract foreign investment in India. Third, India is continually advancing its external expansion strategy, especially in Africa, where India's influence is nearing that of France. People know that Africa was once a French colony, and many African countries use French as their communication language. French influence in Africa is substantial, evident by the many African immigrants in France. However, even France is concerned about India's aggressive establishment of strong cooperation with African countries like South Africa and Algeria, threatening French dominance in Africa. For many African nations, India represents wealth and prosperity. You might be surprised to know how influential Indians are in Africa. In South Africa's capital, if you see a luxury car, there's a high chance it belongs to an Indian. In 2024, India remains the fifth largest investor in Africa, with substantial investments that rival those of developed countries. Over 3 million Indians continue to live in Africa, many holding key positions in retail, dining, and energy industries. Besides economic presence, Indians are also seeking political influence in Africa. India's keen interest in Africa is partly due to its energy needs, but also its ambition to secure a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. African support is crucial in this effort. Lastly, besides India's inherent advantages, it is also the best candidate for Western countries to hinder China's development. India's population is comparable to China's, and many policies seem to treat China as a potential adversary. Take infrastructure investment, for instance. It's almost as if they are secretly competing with China. Although India's economy is still a fraction of China's, they are confident and believe catching up is just a matter of time. This self-assuredness convinces many Western nations that India could potentially curb China's rise. Reflecting on the Russia-Ukraine war, it's notable that India purchased significant quantities of Russian oil during this period. The U.S. observed these actions without issuing severe criticisms. It raises the question of whether other countries would face harsher consequences under similar circumstances. Recently, in cases of friction between India and other nations, Western countries, particularly the U.S., have often shown support for India. Recognizing India's potential is important. Despite facing challenges in modernization due to various factors such as population quality and industrial development, it's worth noting that significant progress can be achieved over time. Historical examples show that countries can advance rapidly from humble beginnings, suggesting that India could experience similar successes in the future. Thank you all for watching. Please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, share, and support the Knowledge Nook.